Michael Savage.
We do have challenges with racial bias in our communities, in our criminal justice system, in our society, the legacy of slavery and segregation. But the fact that we have open debates within America's own democracy is what allows us to get better. In 1959, the year that my father moved to America, it was illegal for him to marry my mother, who was white, in many American states.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, today is, mark it on your calendars, the 22nd of March, 2016. We are living through a new low point in American presidential history. I opened the show with the sound of a baby crying. God knows the injuries that child incurred, or her mother, or her father, or what she's going to have in her mind for the rest of her life, that the Muslims, the Islamo-fascist vermin, the garbage of the human race, did this to the Belgian people, and we have a subversive in the White House who's in a communist dictatorship lecturing Cuba on how evil America was and still is. It is a new low point in American presidential history. And yet I doubt that many people are listening can even understand what's going on. Another terror attack, another one. And the doofus in the White House, he really isn't that stupid, is he? Shall I call him the subversive? Because it's the only word that works. In my day, Barack Obama could not have even been a cop because of his associations, let alone a Secret Service agent. He never would have passed the test to guard himself. He never could have been an FBI agent because he was a subversive. He is a subversive, and he is subverting everything decent about America. Now, I know these sound like really off the wagon words. I recognize that it's offensive to the progressives out there who would rather die and fall on a terrorist bomb than ever admit that their socialist policies are what caused the terrorist bombs to go off. Because you see, liberalism is a mental disorder. And if we continue to let the liberals run the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, well, you name it, the Justice Department, Department of Homeland Security, it's inevitable that we are going to have one, if not many, many more terrorist attacks before this subversive leaves the White House. And I want to ask you today, but I'm not going to ask you anything. I will ask you one question. How would you prevent the next terror attack from occurring? I know the first thing that went through my mind when I saw the people bloodied and in pieces, bloody faces, nail bombs from the practitioners of a religion. That is a religion to you? Islam is a religion? When its holy book tells them to kill the infidel? Please don't tell me that they're not Muslims. Please don't tell me that your brains are so warped that you can't put two and two together. Who took credit for this terror attack in Belgium? Was it Israel? No, not Israel. Was it the Buddhist Organization of America? Certainly not the Buddhist organization. Why, it was ISIS, the Islamic State, that did it. And notice the first word, Islamic State, that did it. And yet we have a subversive in the White House who continues talking about Jackie Robinson and segregation, won't come back and take control of the country. Instead, he stays there to put down the nation. Well, I ask you what you think needs to be done, because the first thing that came to my mind was logical. If the bombings and the terror and the attacks keep coming from a certain community, then you monitor that community and you stop them from attacking by preventively detaining those who are on watch lists. Now, I know this is anathema to the psychopathic liberals at the ACLU, the New York Civil Liberties Union, and the other suicidal organizations that are killing all of us. They're killing us on every front. But it will happen as sure as I'm sitting here. Maybe I'm a little ahead of the curve. I've been ahead of the curve for a while now. But it will happen as sure as I'm sitting here. There will be an awareness finally, and eventually they will be preventively detained, and this will not stop. This will stop. This will stop. We learned today that in Belgium, for example, the so-called security services had 300 young Muslim men of military age, of the type that Obama and Hillary want to bring in here, the type that Bernie Sanders would like to have for dinner. They're on watch lists. Why were they not in jail? Why were they not preventively detained? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Do you have any idea what I am saying to you today on the Savage Nation? Well, I said to myself, this is going to be one of the most challenging days of my radio career. This is another 9/11. But I spoke to a few people today. They didn't even know what happened. Not bad people. One guy was working in a house painting walls. He didn't have a radio on. He didn't know anything about it. And when he gets the news tonight, why, it'll be local San Francisco news. It'll be in passing that a bomb went off somewhere. It was from spontaneous combustion. It was a bunch of paint rags left in a railroad station or under the American Airlines counter. Don't tie it to Islam. Don't tie it to Muslims, because then you might be a Trump supporter. You'll certainly be a bigot. Certainly you'll violate the protocols of the elders of liberalism. There's no question about that. Because as you well know, the protocols of the elders of liberalism are such that you must die for your beliefs. We're not leading in this war. We're not even in it. The subversive in the White House, after being paraded around in Cuba yesterday as a puppet by the communist mafia dictators Castro, took the stage today for a speech, and the only words that the puppet could muster were, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Belgium." Another terror attack by Muslims on his watch, and he has nothing else to say. He then proceeded to bloviate about the shared relationship between the hellhole prison of Cuba and the United States of America. And then he said that both nations were built by slaves, if you can believe this. But who listens to this man anymore? Even his supporters are cringing at the obvious disconnection from reality. A real leader would have been on a plane back home and reaching out to our European allies, formulating an immediate war plan to carpet bomb the enemy in a stronghold in Raqqa. Because they do have a capital, you know. I remember when this all started a number of years ago when I was on the radio, people would say, well, you can't bomb them. They don't have any location. They're kind of individual cells. Each one of them can do it. There's nowhere to bomb. Well, there is somewhere to bomb now. It's called Raqqa. That's where they live. That's where they plot. That's their capital of the world. But our dear leader is only interested in propping up our enemies and putting down our allies and completely ignoring the real problems that have emerged in the Islamic world over the last 1,400 years. These problems have metastasized on his watch, and in many cases with his help. And he gets away with it, not because you and I and the other conscious people of America let him get away with it, but because of the weaklings and quislings that we put into office who let him get away with it, and I'm talking about the Republicans in particular. I have no faith whatsoever in the Charles Schumers and the Nancy Pelosi's. Do you? No, we wrote them off a long time ago. We know who they are. They're a bunch of, well, what they are. But you thought a few Republicans would have stood up to this maniac, but they didn't. Both Republican and Democrat leaders, rank and file members of the government in CIA, FBI, DHS, NSA, refused to stand up to this Fuhrer who holds the most powerful office in the world. Why, they're only following orders. Oh, I know there are brave men and women in these intelligence agencies who know what must be done, and they know who the bad guys are down to a 99th percentile because they're watching them, but they can't touch them. And the reason they can't touch them is because they're only following orders. Remember we heard about that in World War II? When we said all Germans were guilty of the Holocaust? Do you remember that? And then when they were put on trial after the war, some of them said, well, I knew it was bad to torture people and kill them in gas chambers, but I was only following orders. If I didn't follow orders, I would have lost my job, or I would have gone to prison. Well, I'm speaking directly to those of you in the DHS, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, any other department who is being paid to protect us, to step out of line and be disruptors and not just follow orders from the Fuhrer. I hope I've reached you because you're the audience for today. The average person has no power. You have all the power. You, the government employees and the intelligence services, are who this entire show is directed at. Because if there's another attack, the blood will be on your hands. Don't tell me you're afraid of losing your job. I could care less about your job. Don't tell me you're afraid of being demoted. I don't care about your job and demotion. I care about you doing your job. You're being paid trillions of dollars a year. And what are you doing for it? Well, I'll let you tell us what you're doing for it. You're the ones letting this disease to fester in the United States of America. The ACLU, by the way, is the most dangerous subversive organization in America. If and when Donald Trump becomes president, and if and when Donald Trump asks me to give him any advice, one of the first things I would do would be to order a congressional investigation into the ACLU. And if they are found to be a subversive organization, seize all of their assets and go further than that. But I'll pause at this time. And the reason I mention the ACLU and all of the starry-eyed crazy liberals who run the ACLU is for a very specific reason. The New York Police Department had until quite recently one of the most, I would say, intelligent and constructive methods of stopping a terrorist attack in the world. They had put out a report that was 80 pages long on how to watch the Muslim communities around America, but especially in New York, and to see who might be radicalized and to nip them in the bud before they set off a bomb. Well, the rotten, stinking, subversive, anti-American, probably supported by ISIS, ACLU, yes, you heard me, the money is probably flowing from ISIS, being washed through 3 or 4 hands, Saudi Arabian princes, Bahrain businessmen, going into the hands of the communists in America. They sued the NYPD, and a little girl with a law degree, probably from NYU, forced the NYPD to expunge this brilliant program on how to prevent the terrorist attack from their records. They could no longer even publish it. But I have very good news for you. I have it. I captured it before they expunged it. And I will release this at the right time. It's the most brilliant methods I've ever seen to stop the next terrorist attack. But I don't want to lose my main point. This document should be in the hands of every police department in America. But it is not, because a few subversive lawyers successfully shopped it to subversive judges in New York City who subverted the NYPD from stopping the next terrorist attack. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Today is a low point in American presidential history, and I'm asking you how you would prevent the next terror attack from occurring. Obama said nothing about the source of the terror, did he? Did he say where it came from? Did he say Islamofascism? No. As you well know, he may as well have said it was paint rags that went off on spontaneous combustion. So we know that he is a subversive. We also know he's a fellow traveler of many dangerous currents in this country. But I want to tell you right now, we can't let him get away with it anymore. He is not our leader. He is in Cuba propping up a dictator, a big dictatorship, while people who tried to fight for freedom in that country are rotting in Cuban prisons. No one's listening to Obama. They're laughing at him behind his back.